I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. And the wheels kick and the wind's song and the white sails shaking, and a gray mist on the sea's face and a gray dawn breaking. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying, and the flung spray and the blown spume and the seagulls crying. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. The origin of Nathan Zachary, the character, seems unique to me among protagonists in science fiction, fantasy, or alternate history, or even dieselpunk, because I expect his conception was created almost exactly concurrently with the rest of the fantasy of Crimson Skies, which, as created by Jordan Weissman and David McCoy, is a world where you, the player, get to be an ace fighter pilot and a daring airborne pirate, both at once. We, the reader or player, only meet Nathan Zachary as an entry point into this air pirate world, such that we can experience the adventure, playing the roles of pilot and pirate. In this way, Zachary himself could easily remain just an avatar of our own projection of who we imagine being in the fantasy. However, unlike a classically written hero archetype, whose cycle is a journey of discovery, trial, and return, or an avatar whose only purpose is as a placeholder for us, the audience, to inhabit, Zachary is somewhat different. I've called Nathan Zachary the closest thing to a central character in the Crimson Skies, mostly for lack of a better term, and for a number of reasons. His fictional story, in and of itself, would not be all that unique to other people in his world. He wouldn't be a chosen one, or prophesied one, or a great man of his time, that would turn the fate of the world on his actions, like classically conceived heroes, or avatars of the audience playing out a heroic power fantasy, or an epic story. Conversely, what brings him closer to central than most other characters is that Zachary's story, both backstory and game stories, written and played out, make him more akin to an avatar of the Crimson Skies world itself. The world of Crimson Skies starts out as our world, but as events both real and alternate take form, and Zachary experiences them and makes his choices, the course of his fictional life reflects the kind of world that becomes the Crimson Skies. To put it simply, at the risk of being obvious, the world of Crimson Skies isn't moved by the geopolitical decisions of nations and empires, but by the actions of small bands of daring pilots and similar people. Putting it this way may seem strange, and indeed no one should begrudge the central tenet of a fantasy and its appeal. But if you look at the supplemental material that supports the existence of Crimson Skies, there's plenty of evidence that this isn't a world growing and changing via the geopolitics of nation-states and empires, much less the competition of their projects and ideals. This is a world essentially beset by isolation and civil war. We see not only the Russian Civil War, as it happened in our real history, but also the alternate history breakup of the United States that is very explicitly the result of isolationism on a microscale and internal uncivil conflict. Supplementary materials and other stories point to additional civil wars that dominate current events where they didn't in our history. If any adventuring was going to happen in this world, staying on the ground would never be viable. All adventuring would be hindered by hostile borders or confined to localized community issues. In this world, the only way to have adventures spanning far and wide, where friendly ports and allies can be separated by great expanses of hostile territory, is to fly. In this world, the ones who get to do the most adventuring would be pilots. This is where Nathan Zachary and his unique origin comes into play. He is explicitly born a Roma gypsy. As to where he's born and raised, I got the distinct impression it was the American Southwest. But the point is made clear that in the pre-Crimson Skies world, Nathan Zachary is born a designated outsider, living on the fringes of functional society, and subject to prejudice as a thief and a liar. Before we go summarizing and analyzing Zachary's journey into an alternate history, I can state outright that by story's end, he goes from being an outlier of polite society to perhaps the most normal kind of person in the Crimson Skies, a flying pirate building their life off the conflicts and divisions between the new North American nations. Alas, it should become clear by the end that becoming a pirate isn't the central point of Nathan Zachary. His is a journey searching for purpose and community, where he gains more clarity, bit by bit, over the various turns of his life. By story's end, Nathan Zachary becomes well placed as an exemplar of his world. Nathan Zachary's story, in the Wings of Fortune trilogy debut novel Pirate's Gold, is written as an accounting from the man himself, autobiographical, as if he were speaking to an interviewer, and accounts his origins from his childhood before signing on as a fighter pilot all the way to a typical adventure as a newly established air pirate. Nathan is born Roma and grows up with a nomadic gypsy life, where he fought prejudice and derision as a thief and started to learn his craft for surviving danger, and yearned to be more than an outsider. He dreams of finding wealth and respect, his fortune, such that he might find a sense of importance in a community, wherever that may be. He gets his chance during World War I and the United States' entry into the war. The rhetoric used to drum up support and recruitment appeals almost directly to Nathan's values and desires, that immigrant persons and families that found freedom and prosperity in America were now being called on with a patriotic duty to serve and protect freedom for others. For an outsider gypsy who wants to be part of something bigger, to find respect and belonging, something akin to being a hero, this is too good to pass up for Nathan Zachary. He signs on as a fighter pilot and becomes America's youngest fighter ace. Alas, becoming ace is a hollow victory for Nathan, when he is finally confronted with the full reality of being a soldier, losing comrades in arms, even friends, to battle. As he is still young, idealistic, and quite naive, the loss of a friend to an enemy fighter ace brings an understandable sense of sorrow, and an equally understandable but foolish sense of vengeance for the wrong done. Naive in that the wrong done to Nathan is one he does not recognize as being done to his enemies, the Germans, in a supposed game of air combat. It is the first time Nathan is confronted with the ostensible will of Fortune, who acts without anyone's consent or design, and the results of her decisions cannot be undone. Nathan's want for revenge would not bring the sense of justice or peace he needs, and we, the reader, might recognize that the greater injustice, the very nature of war, makes any want of justice futile. Nathan's want for vengeance overcomes his presumed sense of duty as a soldier, as he neglects the advice and wisdom of his squad leader and mentor, real-life ace Rickenbacker, and goes to take revenge on the enemy ace. Instead of heeding his leader's advice and processing his grief in a healthy way, Nathan takes matters into his own hands. After a new battle with the enemy ace, Nathan is shot down and taken as a prisoner of war. Unlike many stories, fictional especially, of prisoners finding ways to survive or escape their captivity, Nathan's story has a twist in that his captivity is made conditional to the want of that enemy ace. Presumably, Heinrich Kissler sees in Nathan somebody who would accept becoming their student, not simply in flying and air combat, but also in Kissler's view of strategy and gamesmanship, as stereotypically represented by games of chess. Nathan himself sees through Kissler's attempt to entice Nathan to serve the German war effort by bribing him with tutelage, as well as presumably the higher luxuries of Kissler's station in the military and aristocracy. We are made certain that Nathan has no interest in switching sides simply for love of military power in flight. But Nathan has the guile not to alienate Kissler and seek ways of getting what he needs to regain his freedom. During his stint as a POW, Nathan makes supposed friends with a German nurse, Hannah Ulen, as well as genuine friends with fellow POW airmen, particularly Jack Mulligan, Angus McMullen, and the German scientist and engineer Dr. Fassenbinder. Jack Mulligan would become Nathan's future wingman and closest confidant, akin to a big brother. And Dr. Fassenbinder would join Nathan for much of his story, and eventually be reunited even after the breakup of the United States. In all that time, Fassenbinder would act like the father Nathan never knew. A curious counterpoint to Nathan's more familial relations is his interaction with Angus, a Scottish airman, who pirated British gold and hid it away before the rest of his band was killed and himself captured. Angus offers Nathan a portion of the hidden gold to guarantee that Nathan won't leave him behind in the escape attempt. Angus doesn't know Nathan like we know him, in that we the reader know that Nathan would like a small fortune so that he may establish a new respectable life for himself as part of normal society. We also know, through Fassenbinder's interaction, that Nathan isn't driven solely by getting riches. He's honorable, values fellowship, and offers goodwill to others long before demanding material gain in return. Which brings his relationship to Hannah Ulen into perspective. After being captured, hers is the first face that doesn't come with a blatant threat to his person. And during Nathan's time as a prisoner or guest of Kissler, he comes to know her in a special way. By the time Nathan and company are almost ready to escape, he thinks he knows her enough that her being German is far less important than the fact that she supposedly doesn't want to be there, maybe even doesn't want any part of the war, or the military as it were, and maybe Hannah would prefer to escape with the others if there's a chance of a better life elsewhere. Alas, come the day of the great escape, and Hannah is revealed to be working for Kissler as his personal protege. Nathan is hurt that she would essentially choose Kissler over him, but as she spells out, his understanding of her motive and disposition goes little deeper than an immature and young love. Despite the betrayal, Nathan leaves her behind, and in the escape, Angus is lost in the fight to flee Kissler. Nathan escapes captivity, finally beating Kissler at his own game. But just like his victory as an ace, it's yet another hollow victory. His dream of bringing with him someone special, Hannah, and finding a source of fortune on which to build a new life, Angus's pirated gold, are both lost to him. So he flies to Russia in search of safety and a new purpose. At this time in World War I, Imperial Russia is on the brink of total defeat at the hands of Imperial Germany, and like in our history, is about to end their involvement via a peace agreement with Germany. By the time Nathan gets involved with them, Russia is far and away no longer a dominant imperial power, and in an age where imperial power in Europe is ending, Nathan comes to offer some hope of salvation in return for safe harbor. Through the family of Fassbinder, Nathan makes a connection with the Russian provisional government and offers a deal. Nathan, Fassbinder, and company will build airplanes and train pilots so the Russians can protect their people. In this arrangement, Nathan gets to be a man of respect, trusted with his skills and goodwill to serve a community, and maybe earn some personal belonging to no longer be an outsider. This does not last. The October Revolution sees the provisional government replaced with the Leninist Bolshevik government, and Nathan Zachary's standing in Russia is left on thin ice. The instability in Russian government in story and in history means that anyone competent enough to serve also makes them suspect in their loyalties. Nathan and company were supposedly serving Russia well by building airplanes and training pilots, with the hope that they would earn the Russian salvation through a victory, or to stave off defeat until peace can be achieved. But once the Bolsheviks take over, Nathan and Fassbinder end up more concerned that their new military air power would be turned upon the Russian populace instead. They find their fears to be well-founded when they get news of the murder of the deposed Tsar and his family, as well as news of Bolshevik attacks on the Russian peasantry, calling them counter-revolutionary imperialists. Suffice it to say, this is not what Nathan Zachary had hoped for. He didn't sign up as a fighter pilot to defend freedom, escape Germany, and help the Russians survive their war, only to be expected to fire on civilians whose only crime was expecting better treatment from the new revolutionary government. With somewhat less guile and more idealist indignation, he puts the Bolsheviks on notice, and seeing no other way to avoid innocent bloodshed, Nathan and company destroy their own work and facilities and leave Russia. Then his only cause left in Russia is to help people get away from the communist takeover, helping innocent people whose only crime was not giving up what little they have to the Bolsheviks, and whose fate would be certain death as counter-revolutionary traitors. Once again, despite Nathan's intentions, his honor and goodwill, his idealism is undermined by the realities of imperialist, autocratic, and dictatorial governments that would demand his loyalty by expecting him to kill friends, allies, or innocent people, and would dispose of him if he did not. In Nathan and company's final exit from Russia, he suffers a more personal loss yet again when Fassbinder, his surrogate father, loses his wife to protect them. Other good men are lost or scattered in the escape, and Nathan is reminded of fortune's power to affect events beyond his control. And despite his best intentions, he must find his fortune elsewhere. The story jumps forward in time to show Nathan Zachary as a new, seemingly self-made man. By 1929, Nathan had apparently used what wealth he earned saving innocent Russians to attend university, and by this point go into business and make bank. What Nathan Zachary achieves at this point in his life seems to be the quintessential American dream. Having worked hard for an education in law, he apparently earned enough to buy into the American stock market, and those investments turned into a small fortune. As he reveals to us readers through an interview with a journalist, his wealth allows him to enjoy a higher class standard of living, including owning a few personal aircraft for flying, and that he credits America with the system that allows him to, quote, follow the dictates of his conscience. There's a contradiction in Nathan's position at this point that, despite appreciating the American freedom to follow his conscience doesn't compel him to any higher calling, except maybe the next lucrative, legally sanctioned business dealing, and not any matters of politics or ideology. If we, the reader, weren't clued in to the incoming historical event of consequence, Nathan's attitude towards policy could be considered innocuous. It's the attitude that, as long as business is good and steady, then there's no need to examine policy and take positions on the political decisions affecting society. It's a kind of neutrality, even isolationist, but if the living's good, why rock the boat? Why make waves? Alas, fortune strikes again. This time with the entirely foreseeable 1929 stock market crash. Our man Nathan is not spared the financial catastrophe, as every stock and investment he had was rendered worthless. He loses everything that was part of his American dream: his house, his cars, his finery, and his airplanes, save one. The political and economic forces that had affected the crash had gone completely over the head of Nathan Zachary and the entire class of so-called self-made businessmen, leaving them all blindsided and destitute. The full causes and effects of the 1929 stock market crash, as well as understanding who benefited and everyone who suffered, is worth a study all its own, and beyond the scope of this essay. For Nathan Zachary, it suffices to say that this event is beginning of the end of the American dream he fought and bled for, worked and lived for. Instead of the federal government stepping in to financially support people and the public sector, instead of regulating banks to stop them losing people's funds, instead of restoring people's confidence in the financial system such that the system can function again in time, in this alternate history, the federal government somehow decides not to act. In this alternate timeline, anyone who thinks the federal government should do nothing gets their wish, and America is broken for it. In this alternate timeline, regionalist and isolationist political movements divide America into more stereotypical provincial identities, abandoning the idea and identity of America, and carving out new nations for which Americans do not apply. After a lifetime of being an outsider, fighting for a higher cause, working to become a man of means and respect in society, Nathan is once again left an outsider. This time, however, Nathan is far from alone, as very many people whose lives were upheld by the United States of America, both the government and especially the identity, are left to either pick a new nation state to commit their newly limited lives to, or become outlaw in so many ways. The alternate history is usually written as having been affected by the unequal application of prohibition laws that helps divide the country, but really, once the borders become hard and hostile, anything crossing them for what was perfectly legal and innocuous becomes subject to a new kind of law and order, much less justice. This is where Nathan finds himself, a man without a country, forced to settle for the simple life, looking after his ailing mother and living on the fringe of a town. This town, New Hope, like so many left isolated from the rest of the country, is being preyed upon by newly uprooted and coercive pirates, who can only make their living stealing from international aerial shipping and extorting locals in racketeering schemes. Thanks to his mother's inspiration, Nathan Zachary gets his idea for a life change. After fixing up his one remaining aircraft and defending New Hope from unscrupulous pirates, Nathan decides to start a band of his own and become an air pirate. After gathering his friends and willing partners and stealing an airship to make a home and base, Nathan Zachary and company become the Fortune Hunters. What separates the Fortune Hunters from other air pirates, as well as Nathan Zachary from other characters in the Crimson Skies, are that, even as pirates, taking anything they want is not the central point, and hurting people unscrupulously is pointedly unacceptable to them. The mentioned articles of air piracy of the Fortune Hunters has these 2 points, although a real-life contract for the pirates would be far more expansive and detailed, just like real articles were. They steal only from those who can afford the financial loss, and they don't threaten anyone who isn't already threatening them. Just like real-life piracy's goal was to get the most value out of the theft for minimum cost in damage and health, so too do Nathan Zachary's Fortune Hunters make their living. how a band of pilots can make their living off piracy in the Crimson Skies is probably worth another discussion altogether. What Nathan gets out of the arrangement is much of what he wanted to achieve ever since his youth. He gets to earn the respect of his crew and peers in the pilots and airship crew, which is basically his own community to whom he can be a hero. Unlike the false promise from Heinrich Kissler, Nathan's band is a real fellowship of pilots. Whatever they steal, they get to fully indulge in, or else help support the upkeep of their home and aircraft, the tools of their trade, just as people of wealth and means would. In this way, his time with Fassbinder and his want of scientific achievement in engineering and aviation is realized, both before and after Nathan is reunited with his father's surrogate. As a group not committed nor coerced into greater power structures, Nathan and his fortune hunters are even better empowered to act against bullies and protect innocents. Unlike the false promise of the Russian Communist Revolution. Indeed, in the Crimson Skies, there is no shortage of abusive bullies and people they would victimize, for no better reason than personal indulgence. And all of Nathan's skills to these ends are a direct carryover and continuation from his time as a military fighter pilot. And in the Crimson Skies, these skills are highly relevant, if not paramount, so he would never suffer a sense of uselessness. In this way, he is continuing the service he committed to as a fighter pilot, and the soldier's life he was taught outside his gypsy upbringing. As to any authority that demands compliance or coerces people based on self-serving ideology and presumed privilege, Nathan Zachary and his fortune hunters are perfectly willing to thumb their noses at them, fly free from greedy hands in power, and wager their lives fighting to prove them wrong. It also means that Nathan and company can act on their moral authority to protect people in need and connect with them personally, without feeling like traitors to their class or station in life. They'll fight and shoot down anti-pirate forces sent to arrest or kill them. And I can easily see them befriending the same people, if those former enemies were down on their luck, or dealt a bad hand in life, or especially if they've been betrayed by a system they fought and suffered for, the exact kind of position Nathan Zachary himself would know all too well. Outside of Nathan Zachary's origin story in Pirate's Gold, many other publications set in the Crimson Skies show that, as an air pirate, Nathan Zachary is empowered to follow the dictates of his conscience in a way he couldn't otherwise. In other stories, in no particular order, he finds a certain militia pilot framed for treason, who would have killed air pirate Nathan without a second thought, and helps him clear his name, Loyal Crawford. In another story, he catches a militia pilot disguising herself as a pirate and infiltrating a pirate haven, where she would certainly be killed if outed, and helps her and her squadron escape, Charlie Steele. In yet another case, he finds a boy and a girl kept apart by a greedy robber baron, and so co-opts the local pirate band to break up a crooked ring of deadly air races, as well as the dirty cops covering for them, and helps take them all down. There are yet more examples of this in the continuing story of Nathan Zachary and the Fortune Hunters as depicted in the Wings of Justice debut novel Rogue Flyer, as well as the original PC game. The story of Rogue Flyer is told from the point of view of a militia pilot, Trevor Gerard, as well as fortune hunter pilot Betty Charles. But Nathan Zachary's ethos still dominates the narrative, especially from Betty's perspective. The main source of danger in story are the Black Hats, a group of air pirates who unscrupulously steal and kill, both soldiers and civilians alike, and whose goals, from both an outside perspective and inside, are to cause terror as much as steal. The reveal of the story is that they are pointedly causing damage and death to undermine Blake Aviation security, so that a competitor, Sacred Trust Incorporated, can take over private security contracts. The Black Hats are pirates in service to increased corporate market share, and their single unscrupulous shareholder. We learn more of Nathan Zachary's fortune hunters through the eyes of Betty Charles, who at first thinks she's good to join for the thrill of adventure and escaping destitution, but comes to question whether the fortune hunters, and by extension she, are any better as pirates than the Black Hats, as she witnesses them preying on the populace. While the Black Hats are plaguing Seattle and Blake Aviation Security, the fortune hunters spend the story rescuing Nathan's old friend, Dr. Fassenbinder, rescuing Fassenbinder's daughter, Ilsa, from Boeing, stealing a prototype for new aircraft engine technology, and when Blake Aviation musters forces to take them down, they preemptively strike and destroy Blake Aviation's weapons, ending the threat. In the same period, Betty gets close to and develops an attraction to former Blake Aviation agent Trevor Gerard, and is conflicted as to how they can have a relationship when he serves law and order and she's a pirate. Despite the internal conflict, Betty still helps Trevor in his quest to take down the Black Hats, and chooses to act heroically without question whenever the Black Hats make their attacks. Through Betty's perspective, we get to learn more of the fortune hunters' history and how they and Nathan Zachary choose and act the way they do. As fellow hunter Tex explains, sometime before Betty joined up, Nathan tried his hand at cooperating with another band of pirates to take on larger, better defended airships and cargo. There were some examples, like with the Black Swan, where Nathan and company made good on their working relationships and earned some trust from their peers down the line. But one time with an unscrupulous partner made Nathan and his band twice shy about committing to cooperation with any other band of pirates. This partner was none other than Lucas Miles, who Nathan fought and supposedly killed to save his friends. Unbeknownst to them, Lucas Miles survived and became the boss of both the Black Hat Pirates and the Sacred Trust private security firm, benefiting both from plunder and the terror of survivors. In this story, Nathan Zachary's bad experiences with other pirates is his reason not to join up in a larger coalition of pirates, not least of which because Nathan Zachary and his fortune hunters are singularly unique in ways incompatible with more violent, more indiscriminate criminals. Unlike the Black Hats and Lucas Miles, much less his lackeys in Ulysses Booth and Ace Dixon, the fortune hunters aren't founded simply on taking anything and everything they can get by force and terror. Nathan Zachary's vision is literally about the formation of an airborne community, akin to gypsies. A community that can support itself, look out for its members, and avoid the yoke of coercive power and physical threats. Not just of unrepresentative government, but also violent antisocial criminals. Perhaps the most consequential thefts they partake is in their trusted colleagues from captivity, of one kind or another, and of technology that can make their lives more feasible. Indeed, the in-universe Robin Hood comparison is fitting for Nathan and company, such that, despite not distributing wealth to the poor, they can be considered a kind of social banditry that undermines the concentrated power of the wealthy to the benefit of everyone they trade with. And who would be most willing to trade with and support a band like the fortune hunters? The disenfranchised, the isolated, and the underprivileged. Like Nathan Zachary touts in another story, I have many friends in low places. This dynamic of the fortune hunters taking on the powers that be and winning, but also earning a social trust, continues even after the events of Rogue Flyer. From the PC Games story, the fortune hunters and the Black Hats clash directly, and in the process, the fortune hunters team up with their erstwhile pirate hunters, Blake Aviation Security. Both Nathan Zachary and Paladin Blake discover the machinations of Lucas Miles, using both pirate Black Hats and private security Sacred Trust together for profit, at the cost of so much innocent blood spilt. The quest to take down Lucas Miles has Paladin Blake fighting from within the law, while Nathan Zachary fights from outside the law to take down the brutal operation. Paladin fights for justice by law, while Zachary seeks justice by direct means. In the end, Paladin seems to recognize the fortune hunters not as simple thieves and brutes, but as people worthy of respect and due consideration, even if his legal obligation is still to take them down for the crimes of piracy. At the same time, Nathan Zachary and his fortune hunters stand tall and fly free, unburdened of any moral contradiction, as free men and women that fought of their own free will for a justice they believed in, and a justice they extend not just to countless strangers, but even to those who would call them enemies. Nathan Zachary and his fortune hunters' place in the world of Crimson Skies is not simply as heroes of the hour or even of the times. Compared to citizens forced into new diminished national identities, and criminals newly dispossessed and pressured into preying on those citizens and each other, our heroes belong to a class of characters that are essentially one of the few still able to act on their moral imperative, even when the old social, economic, legal, and cultural systems of America fail to uphold the same imperative, and were cast aside. In their ongoing quest to find their fortune, both personally and collectively, the other characters they meet in the Crimson Skies have their own moral imperatives, especially despite their assigned roles in their new post-American lives. For fellow pirates, pirate hunters, privateers, civilians, and even law enforcement, for anyone that recognizes a higher moral authority over mere self-interest or convenience, the fortune hunters present an opportunity to answer a higher calling and act to create a new kind of social unity that was lost with the United States. Anywhere they make new friends and new allies is a place they can make a home, in the way that gypsies can. And anywhere they can take down the greedy, the violent, and the authoritarian is a place where people can be free again to answer their higher calling, just like our heroes do. As the stories of Nathan Zachary and his fortune hunters are constructed, there is no place where they can ever really be morally compromised. The hero fantasy of Crimson Skies is simply not made for that to happen. But having their heroism baked in via author mandate or fiat isn't a bad thing, not in my view. It's a portrayal for what I saw as a truly inspirational idea, that no matter how much life may be consumed at the smallest detail by self-interest, mutual distrust, violence, and grievance, there is always a chance, always a hope, that doing what is just on a more universal level is not only possible, but with the proper care and attention, feasible. That acting on a more universal sense of justice will not just be accepted, but reciprocated as well. And that enough reciprocity of justice between enough people will eventually show enough people all at once some greater truths. That no one has to suffer tyrants of any sort, nor reject anyone's personhood for any morally irrelevant difference. To quote a truly profound author, Terry Pratchett, "Take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder, and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy. We need to believe in things that aren't true. How else can they become true?" For any character in the Crimson Skies, whether deep or shallow as straw, that resigns to misanthropy of one kind or another, the fortune hunters represent a hope to believe in untrue things. Justice, freedom, and love, subject only to death and the whims of fortune. As the world of Crimson Skies is plagued with isolation, civil strife, and piracy, Nathan Zachary, his fortune hunters, and their airship home Pandora keep hope alive for a free and more just future. You could say they do this with Lady Luck as their matron.